The elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor. No one looked up. Inside the boardroom, the pre-meeting buzz had begun. Whiteboards filled with graphs, coffee cups half full, laptops glowing. A few junior execs chuckled softly as one pointed at his phone, showing off something. At the far end of the long oak table, chairs were still being adjusted, suits straightened, and small talk exchanged like currency. She walked in quietly, scrubs, sneakers, and a badge clipped at her waist. No makeup, no jewelry, a backpack slung over one shoulder. A man near the door raised his eyebrows. "Excuse me, maintenance comes after hours," he said, not unkindly, but with the sort of tone reserved for wait staff or interns who wandered in by mistake. She looked at him for a moment, then simply said, "I'm here for the 9 a.m. meeting." The man frowned. "For the board presentation?" He laughed awkwardly. "You must be in the wrong place." She didn't respond, just took a seat in the back corner of the room, opened her notebook, waited. Another woman leaned in, whispered to a colleague, "Is she auditing?" "HR." She shrugged. "No one briefed me." The clock hit 9:02, and still no one realized they were already sitting with the most important person in the room. The room filled slowly with more suits. A man with salt and pepper hair, clearly senior, entered and received immediate attention. "Morning, Mr. Hargrove," someone said. A few others straightened in their chairs. He gave a nod, then glanced briefly at the woman in scrubs. His brow furrowed slightly, like he was trying to place her. Before he could ask, the younger man who first spoke leaned over. "She's here by mistake. Thought it was HR or maybe facilities." Hargrove nodded without comment, then took his seat at the head of the table. The woman stayed quiet. People continued to enter, all glancing past her. Some offered polite, confused smiles. Others avoided eye contact entirely. At 9:10, the doors closed. Someone dimmed the lights slightly. The presentation began. A woman from strategy started speaking, confident, polished. "We've been tracking quarterly projections across sectors. With the acquisition still pending confirmation, this is a critical window." The woman in the corner wrote a single note in her notebook. One word: assumptions. Nobody noticed. They were too focused on the slides, the talk of valuations, the minor scramble over who had the most updated financial sheet. They were in a room full of voices, but no one had yet said anything real. She waited, not with impatience, but with precision. Midway through the second presentation, someone finally approached her. He wore a fitted blue suit, and his smile was practiced. "Hey there, just want to make sure you're in the right place. This is the Darden Russell investor briefing." She looked up. "I know." He hesitated. "It's just we're running pretty sensitive materials today. Might be best to coordinate with reception downstairs." She didn't move. "I was invited." That caught him off guard. Still, he didn't press. "Okay, I'll just double-check with someone." "No problem." He walked back to his chair, already typing a message on his phone. A few glances darted her way now. Quick, uncertain. Not alarmed, but curious. In the middle of a revenue breakdown, the woman presenting paused to sip water, then looked at Hargrove. "Are we expecting the rep from Havenbrook Capital soon?" Hargrove tapped his watch. "Should have been here by now." Someone checked their email thread. It said the Havenbrook principal would attend in person. The man in the blue suit joked under his breath. "Maybe they're late like everyone else from New York." Light chuckles rippled across the table. The woman in scrubs didn't laugh. She was already flipping to the next page in her notes, still silent, still waiting, and still invisible to the room that was slowly realizing they didn't know who they were supposed to be impressing. At 9:27, someone knocked. All heads turned. A young assistant poked in. "Excuse me, Mr. Hargrove. The principal from Havenbrook is already in the room." Confused glances shot across the table. Hargrove's brow knit. "Already in the room? Where?" The assistant looked directly at the woman in the corner. "That's her," she said quietly, and stepped back, letting the door close behind her. A hush fell over the room. Slow, heavy. Every eye turned. The woman stood calmly, closed her notebook, walked to the head of the table. Her sneakers made no sound on the carpeted floor. She stood beside Hargrove, not behind him, and finally spoke. "My name is Dr. Lila Warren, Principal Equity Partner at Havenbrook Capital. We finalized the acquisition of Darden Russell Holdings yesterday." She paused. "Let that land. Today I came to observe. I wanted to see how your leadership team carries itself, how they treat people when they think no one important is watching. No one moved. She scanned the table. Slowly. I've seen enough. No one knew what to say. Mr. Hargrove's lips parted slightly, but no words came. The man in the blue suit went pale. The strategist who had been presenting earlier adjusted her glasses, suddenly unsure of where to look. Dr. Lila Warren didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She stepped away from the head of the table and walked slowly to the windows, her back to the skyline. I watched people dismiss me, question my presence, and try to move me out of the room. Not one of you asked my name. She turned back, calm. I dress this way because I choose to. What I own, what I lead, isn't for show. It's built from decisions, from values, from watching how people act when they think they don't have to impress anyone. Her eyes landed on the man in the blue suit. He flinched slightly. Your numbers are fine, she said. But numbers aren't the whole story. Culture is. Judgment is. Another pause. Respect is. Silence pressed into every corner of the room. And no one, not one person, could meet her gaze for long. Someone coughed lightly. Another rustled papers just to break the silence. Mr. Hargrove finally stood. His voice was low. Dr. Warren, we weren't informed you'd already arrived. She tilted her head, expression unreadable. And if you had been, would it have changed how I was treated? He didn't answer. Instead, he nodded once, stiffly, and sat back down. The man in the blue suit cleared his throat, tried to recover. Dr. Warren, I think we all appreciate your candor, and I want to personally apologize for. I don't need your apology, she said, cutting in gently but firmly. I need better judgment, from people trusted to lead. Her eyes moved to the woman from strategy. You presented well, confident, prepared, but you glanced at me 3 times. Not once did you ask who I was. The woman swallowed hard, gave a tiny nod. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, Dr. Warren continued, but I am here to evaluate more than earnings. She walked back to her chair. Not the corner one. This time, she pulled out the seat directly beside Hargrove and sat. From there, she quietly opened her notebook again. Let's continue. But nothing felt the same anymore. The meeting stumbled forward. Charts flickered back onto the screen. A junior associate resumed reading projections, but his voice lacked conviction now. He avoided looking at Dr. Warren. She didn't interrupt. She took notes. Her calmness made the tension worse. The weight in the room had shifted completely. People leaned forward now, not out of interest but anxiety. What did she see? What had they missed? Hargrove, usually composed, fumbled with his coffee. The strategist's hands trembled slightly as she clicked to the next slide. Dr. Warren said nothing. She didn't need to. Her silence filled the gaps between every word being spoken, and the message was clear. She had seen them before they knew who she was, and now, everything they said was being measured against that. A few tried harder, offered sharper insights, clearer language. The room wanted to undo what couldn't be undone. Dr. Warren kept her pen moving, but her expression stayed still. A man across the table leaned toward his colleague and whispered something behind his hand. He thought it was subtle. Dr. Warren looked up and met his eyes. He went rigid, looked down, didn't speak again. Across the room, others shifted in their seats, unsure whether to speak or stay quiet. The usual easy flow of corporate conversation was gone. Now every word felt like a risk. Hargrove tried to redirect. Let's focus on the key integration steps. We've identified some early synergies with Havenbrook's infrastructure. Dr. Warren raised a hand slightly. He stopped mid-sentence. I'd like to hear from your team, she said. Not about synergies. About culture. Silence. Then, slowly, the strategist spoke. I think we sometimes operate in silos. There's pressure. A lot of it. Dr. Warren nodded once. And when that pressure hits, how are people treated? The ones who don't walk in wearing the right suit or title. No one answered. Not immediately. Until the junior associate, the one who'd been presenting, murmured. We don't always notice them. Until it's too late. Dr. Warren looked at him. Thank you. The others stayed quiet. But her attention had already shifted. She was watching who would speak, and who still looked away. Dr. Warren closed her notebook. The gesture was quiet but final. She looked around the room, making eye contact with each person in turn. Let me be clear, she said, her voice low but firm. I don't need perfection. I don't expect it. But what I do expect is awareness of how you carry yourselves, of how you make decisions not just on paper, but with people. She paused on Hargrove. You run this place. But leadership isn't about who talks first or loudest. She let that hang, then shifted her gaze to the man in the blue suit, who now looked small in his chair. And assumptions? They're expensive. More than anything in your quarterly budget. Because once made, they shape every interaction, every hire, every deal. No one interrupted. It wasn't a lecture. It felt more like an audit. Today you assumed I was a nobody. And maybe tomorrow someone else will walk in wearing old shoes or no title. My question is, will you see them then? No one answered. But for the first time, the silence didn't feel defensive. It felt like people were listening. No one reached for their coffee. No one tapped their phones. The meeting was still going, technically, but nothing was being presented anymore. The slides were frozen on a cost breakdown no one was looking at. Dr. Warren leaned back slightly in her chair. She wasn't performing. She wasn't angry. She was calm, in control, and everyone felt it. Some of you will go home today and try to explain this to someone, she said. You'll say it was a misunderstanding or that you didn't mean anything by it. She paused. But the truth is simpler. You didn't look. And that's what I pay attention to. The man in the blue suit finally spoke quietly. What happens now? She looked at him. Not coldly, but without offering reassurance. Yeah? We finish this meeting. We complete the transition. But the real work? It starts when I leave this room. When you go back to your teams. When you remember what it felt like to realize you weren't seeing someone until it was too late. She stood, smoothed the front of her scrub top. Hargrove started to rise, unsure if the meeting was ending. She gestured for him to stay seated. I'll be in touch, she said simply. Individually. Then she turned, notebook in hand, and walked out. Outside the boardroom, the hallway was quiet. Dr. Warren walked without hurry. She passed assistants, interns, receptionists, people who barely looked twice at her on the way in. Now some turned to stare. Others nodded hesitantly. She didn't respond, just kept walking, calm and steady. One young woman near the elevators, perhaps an admin, caught her eye. Wide-eyed, holding a stack of folders, clearly flustered. You're Dr. Warren? She nodded once. Yes. I just wanted to say thank you. For what happened in there. Dr. Warren offered the faintest smile. What did you see? The woman hesitated, then said, I saw people learn something they should have known already. Dr. Warren nodded again. That's the part I'm interested in, what they do with that knowledge. The elevator opened. She stepped inside, turned to face forward, and the doors closed quietly behind her. Back in the boardroom, no one had moved. They were still staring at the same slide, still holding the same coffee. But everything had changed. No one said much for a while. Mr. Hargrove finally stood slowly. He adjusted his tie, then looked around the table. Well, he muttered, that didn't go the way I planned. The strategist gathered her papers carefully like they might break if moved too fast. She didn't speak. The junior associate sat still, staring at his hands. The man in the blue suit leaned back, exhaled through his nose. She watched us the whole time, he said quietly. And we made her invisible. No one argued. One of the older VPs shook his head. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't even need to. That was what unsettled them most. There had been no confrontation, no outburst. Only stillness. And truth. Hargrove cleared his throat. Let's reconvene later. Take the rest of the morning. Think about what just happened. They filed out slowly. No one made a call. No one checked email. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was reflection. The kind that sticks. Back at their desks, people spoke in quieter tones. Some called it the scrub moment. Others just said, did you see? But no one laughed. In HR, someone started drafting a new onboarding module. In legal, a partner wrote and deleted a memo about DI optics 3 times before deciding not to send it at all. And down in facilities, one of the janitors, Marcus, heard about it from a passing intern. He nodded once, then kept mopping. But he told his daughter that night. Told her about a woman who wore sneakers and silence like armor and walked into a room full of suits who didn't see her until it was too late. She didn't raise her voice, his daughter asked. No, Marcus said. She didn't have to. The following week, her name stayed out of headlines. No press release. No internal email highlighting the event. Just a meeting remembered differently by each person who had been in the room. The junior associate who had spoken briefly found himself working later, asking different questions in meetings, watching who got cut off mid-sentence and who didn't. The woman from strategy requested time with HR, asked to review how their team handled upward feedback. She didn't say why. She didn't need to. And the man in the blue suit, he dressed the same, talked the same, but paused longer when people entered the room now. Especially those he might have once ignored. Because the moment had changed them. Not with a punishment or a reprimand, but with a mirror. Dr. Warren didn't return for the follow-up meeting. She sent a deputy instead, young, sharp, wearing a sweatshirt and jeans. The team didn't question his place. They offered him coffee, called him sir. No one asked if he was in the right room. Later that afternoon, a single email arrived. Subject line, Post-acquisition review notes, Darden Russell. 3 sentences long. Observed culture misalignments noted and documented. Immediate corrective actions in progress. Further evaluations to follow. No signature beyond her name, L. Warren. That was it. But those in the room would carry it with them. Each glance, each pause, each quiet, painful realization. Because the lesson hadn't been about power. It had been about presence. About what people reveal when they think no one's watching. And how quickly the whole room changes when they finally see who is.